what you know about Grandmama. Now on today's episode, we're going to run it back with none other than Larry Grandmama Johnson.
I'm Larry Johnson. Some call me Aero Jam. I love the dog.
Larry Johnson. Donkey Larry Johnson. The Frederick
Now, if you don't know, Larry Johnson, he was drafted into the NBA in 1991, the first overall pick out of the University of Las Vegas. Now, right off the bat, Larry Johnson was a powerhouse when he came into the NBA. He could dunk, he could score. He had a body like Charles Barkley and could drive the net like Charles Barkley and could dunk on you like Larry Johnson. He was so entertaining that his dunks were spectacular all on its own, and you didn't need to compare him to anyone else in the league. Larry Johnson came into the league. He knew he was going to get a shoe contract with somebody, and he wanted Nike. Since the University of Las Vegas was a Nike school, he thought that Nike would call upon him to be one of their spokesmen for their model. But Larry Johnson waited and waited, and Nike said they did not feel like he was a right fit for Nike. Larry Johnson was a little choked at that since he went first overall pick and didn't get chose by Nike to promote their product. Everyone underneath him that was drafted actually got signed with Nike, which was kind of funny. But it was a blessing in disguise because Converse was a company well known, and Converse wanted to go a different direction of what they were doing in the past with these regular basketball shoes. They wanted to kind of be like Nike and be more flashy and more looked at as a company like Nike, where they like the kids would be wanting the shoe. And Larry Johnson was the best spokesman for them. And they came up with this idea at first when Larry Johnson was being called upon by Converse. They came up with this idea that since Larry Bird and Magic Johnson were both spokesmen for Converse, they came to Larry Johnson, gave him $1 million contract, and said, we got this idea where Larry Bird will be playing against Magic Johnson, and they're trying to think of a player that they can make together that had passing skills like Magic and shooting skills like Larry Bird. And at the end of the commercial, Larry Johnson would come out of the car and say, "You guys were looking for me," and that's how Larry Johnson was created. Instead, Larry Johnson went and called Converse and said, "Okay, I'm ready to do this commercial about that you guys told me about, and I'm super excited to do that with Larry Bird and Magic Johnson." In turn, that commercial was never made, and Converse came up with a different idea. What they came up with was an interesting concept in the 90s where I don't know if it would fly today, but I'm glad they came up with this concept because it's one of the greatest sporting commercials ever made in the 90s. So what we got here is the introduction of Larry Johnson alter ego, or also known as Larry Johnson's grandma, Grandmama. And in those early commercials of Grandmama, Grandmama could play basketball.
These are my new shoes from Converse. They're so light and so fast, my grandmama can whoop you in them.
And that was the idea, that Larry Johnson would be like, yeah, I got my skills from my grandma, and this is what my grandma can do, and she does it in these Converse sneakers. So, as I said before, they were trying to come up with, they try to go a different way with their sneakers, so they came up with this cushioning system called Converse React.
React juice. Ready to move this way, juice reacts that way.
What it was kind of like a Nike Air Bubble, almost, but it had this kind of gel cushioning to it, which back in the early 90s was a new concept, and I guess they didn't think that the liquid would dry and crack over time. What they were thinking, that the cushion system works right now, and that's what we're going with. It was in a lot of the early 90s Converse sneakers worn by Kevin Johnson, Larry Johnson, and other players under the Converse umbrella during the early 90s. The first sneaker that was made in the Converse line for Larry Johnson was the Converse Aero Glide. And this one, I've been on the hunt for years to find a wearable pair if possible, but one in good condition. It has that effect on me like the Air Jordan 4. It almost looks like the Air Jordan 4. It has the plastic wings on the side. It has the shroud across the front, which kind of reminisces of a body armor detective bulletproof vest almost. I think this shoe is well designed, and I wish that Converse can give us a retro of the Converse Aero Glide. Larry Johnson really had some great advertisements for the Aero Glide. Him as Grandmama, him as himself, and the grand stage where he was wearing the Aero Glide was the 1991 Slam Dunk competition where he made the semifinal. Before I go on to the next model in the Larry Johnson signature line, I have a little bit of a beef with companies that like to bring back shoes from their archive. Now, when we're growing up in the 90s, the reason we like these shoes is because they look good, because there was a player attached to these shoes, and they give us great memories from our youth. Now, if you're not going to bring back a shoe and go, I don't know, give this player, I don't know, $50,000 to put his name on the shoe, where it looks like, or $1 million for that matter, where it doesn't look like it did back in when we got it originally, what's the point? I don't understand that. I'll use a couple instances for an example. The Grant Hill Fila line. The only reason we want to buy the Filas is because Grant Hill's name was on them. So when they retroed them a couple years ago, they just called it the GH3 or whatever. Or they didn't even say Grant Hill. They called it the Fila 97 or Fila 96 or 93, but it had no Grant Hill branding on it. Which, to me, why would you bring a retro shoe of a shoe that was a Grant Hill model back when it came in originally and not put his name on it and not go, hey, Grant Hill, do you mind if we bring back your shoe and we'll do a little thing, like a little promotion on the Grant Hill and play respect to you? Why would they bring it out and not put his name on it and just call it a Fila shoe? No one's going to buy that. Even though they kind of made up for it this year for the 25th anniversary, put Grant Hill's name on these shoes, and guess what? I'm pretty sure they're selling. I'm pretty sure they're selling because Grant Hill's attached to the shoes that actually gives us memory of certain shoes. Now, back in the early 2000s, I'll move on to the next model. The next model in the Larry Johnson shoe line was 1993 Converse Aero Jam. Now, the one in my hand isn't the one from 1993. It is the most recent retro. I'll talk about that in a sec. But the Aero Jam originally came out in 1993, and this was at the peak of the Larry Johnson Grandmama height. And in 1993, you could see Grandmama in commercials, you could see her in ads in magazines, and most notably, you could see her in TV shows, such as one of my favorite episodes of Family Matters, where Steve Urkel and Larry Johnson, dressed up as Grandmama, join a basketball tournament because Eddie wouldn't play with Steve Urkel, so Steve Urkel managed to find Grandmama, who was good at basketball, and they managed to win the tournament together. One of my favorite episodes of Family Matters. You could also see Grandmama in a lot of TV ads at the time. One was the little old lady who lived in a shoe commercial, and you could see they were really plugging the Aero Jam and the React Juice. Originally, I believe the Converse Aero Jam came in 3 colors. You had the predominantly white, teal, and purple issue. You had the black teal Aero Jam, the black and teal. And there is also a white, I believe there was a white-based one, a white with all white and teal that Larry Johnson wore. What was good about Converse back in the early 2000s, they did bring back the Aero Jam in a retro release, but the shoe wasn't built the same as it was in 1993. It was missing a lot of the character of the shoe from the 1993 release. even though they did give us a few things on the retro versions that they didn't give us on the most recent retros. Like I was saying before, my little rant, why would they bring a shoe back without the player attached to it? But in the early 2000s, the retros of the Aero Jam, they gave us the number 2 on the shroud. I do not have the models from the retro release back then. I sold them all because of the new ones. The retros from the early 2000s did come with a grandmama hang tag shouting out the person that made their shoes famous. And on this hang tag, it says, dressed to the hit in the Aero Jam shoes and support hose. She owned every court and every TV commercial. Who's the man? She is. And just like Grandmama, these performance throwbacks will turn heads, whether you're playing on the court or dress up. Established in 1993. Now, why I say that is they brought a really good retro back in the last couple years of the Converse Aero Jam. But why would they bring the Aero Jam without giving a shout out to Larry Johnson like you did in the early 2000s? I know he lost his contract with Converse back in, I want to say 1995, as they were renegotiating his contract, and he said, I don't want to play Grandmama anymore. So they said, okay, well, we're not going to re-sign you for Converse, and that gave him the opportunity to wear other sneakers if he wanted to. But if Converse is bringing back an Aero Jam in now, like 2019, 2020 era, why would you not call Larry Johnson up and say, hey, we're bringing your Aero Jams back. Would you like to, promote them? We'll give you a couple bucks if you let us put your name on it. I don't understand why they don't do that. So when the retros came out, I took it upon myself to make them look more original. So when these came out, they did not have the number 2 on it. It took me a real long time to find somebody in this city that would do it. But there is the number 2 on the shroud that should be there, like the original from 1993. I also took the hang tag off the retros and just put them on the side just to give it that look. I know they took the React juice out. It's not that big of a deal because it was probably some kind of liquid that they can't use anymore. But they could just say React, like Converse React, and put some kind of bubble in there. I don't know. But in my opinion, this retro is really well done and looks really good. When they first talked about this one coming out, there is a sample pair that was floating on the internet with the correct font from 1993, the correct font on the tongue, and a number 2 on the shroud. Why was the samples made with the number 2 on the shroud? It doesn't make any sense to me. The other model I have as well, I also did the number 2 on the shroud to make it look more like the 1993 pair with the number 2. And I just think it adds 100% adds character to the shoe and makes it more desirable to collectors of Larry Johnson. Anyways, you got the number 2s right on the shroud. It did cost me a fortune to get just these little 2s done on each shroud of the shoes, but in my opinion, it makes them more meaningful to me. What I did like about the most recent retro that they did not do on the original retro from the early 2000s is they gave us the Aero Jam print just like it was in 1993. Give the insole and it says Cons Aero Jam on the insole. I think that was a nice little touch. Now going on to the next model, we're going to talk about the Converse Back Jam. I found this shoe at Value Village a long time ago. It was the Converse Back Jam, and that was at the point where I wanted to resell shoes to get the newest models. So unfortunately, I did sell that model. It was pretty wearable. They were a little beat up, but it was pretty wearable, the Converse Back Jam. I only know that it comes in a few different colors. I do not have it anymore. I wish I still kept it. And if I do see one again, I'll probably pick it up if I can find one for a good price. After the Back Jam, Larry Johnson wore a few different models of Converse shoes, but they didn't have his name attached to it or the Grandmama branding. He wore a couple Converse shoes until his contract was over. And about this time is when Larry Johnson started having back pain, and his career changed from this explosive player with huge dunks and wild personality and crazy entertaining style. He changed his style to an outside shooter and lost his explosiveness to the net. Not saying that his changed for the worse, but at this point in time, his contract with the Charlotte Hornets ended, and he was later traded to the New York Knicks. Now, he did still play well with the New York Knicks, but his game was a lot different from when he was with the Charlotte Hornets. He was shooting more outside, shooting three-pointers, and shooting a lot of the 13-footers around the net. I believe he still wore a few different Converse models, but I think he was a free agent in the sneaker world, so he could wear Nikes if he wanted to. There is some highlights of his time in New York, but a lot different than his highlights in his early days with Charlotte Hornets. But most notably is the LJ moment when he took out the Pacers in the NBA playoffs with that 5 seconds left, with the inbound play where he caught the ball and shot over Anthony Davis, I think it was, with 5 seconds on the clock to tie the game. One of his most memorable moments as a New York Knick. If Larry Johnson didn't get injured or have his back pain, he probably would have lasted in the league a little bit longer. Unfortunately, he retired in 2000, hung up the shoes for good. But we, as fans of the NBA and fans of players from the past, he has really brought some great memories for us as fans. And if Converse, if you hear me or watching this video, I would like a Converse run. At least the first 4 models in his... Oh, that's only 4 shoes. You already did the Aero Jam. You don't need to do that one again. But maybe give us the Aero Glide or the Back Jam. And give a good shout out to Larry Johnson, as he'll be always remembered as one of those characters that pop culture has brought into their lives, or a pop culture figure from the early 90s that lasted a short amount of time. Thank you for watching my video today. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Forsyth23. If you have any questions or comments, please comment below. And don't forget to subscribe. I'm trying to think of new ideas, and let me know what you think. And that is my video on the Converse line, Larry Johnson.